path of Hurricane Helene a couple weeks ago, way up into the mountains. And I just haven't had a chance to catch up on everything. Like, Penguin came out, I think I watched the first 2 episodes, maybe only the first one. At this point, I can't really remember. And I just, for whatever reason, had so much stuff to catch up on, and then I got my 4K of Arcane Season 1, and then, some other things were happening. Come to think of it, I think I have Train to Busan sitting in my mailbox right now. I'm going to have to remember to grab that after the show's over. That's something else we should talk about.
Yes.
And
it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah, dude, it's so good. I was telling some people about it at work yesterday or today. I can't remember. But surprisingly, that one has skipped. I was like, because there were like 2 or 3 people there, none of them had seen it, and I was like, that's crazy. I was like, I feel like some of you would have seen this. It was on
such a wonderful movie.
I know, it was on Netflix for a really long time too. And I, as of right now, Train to Busan, I think there's an argument to be made, but I think it's my favorite zombie movie ever, and I'd say it's probably one of the best, if not the best. The sequel sucks, though. The sequel's really bad.
Oh, it is? I didn't even realize there was one. Yeah,
it's called Transit or something like that, and it's one of those things where they did the Train to Busan presents Transit or whatever. It's just it's a weird sequel. I don't know. It's weird because it's totally different from the first one. Because the zombie apocalypse has basically happened at this point, and there are these like hubs of people surviving, and there's this one place, and they have like almost like and I haven't seen this in a couple of years, so forgive me if the details are a little off, but they have like this pit where people fight zombies and stuff. And there's some sort of like weird big version of one that they put out, and I don't know if it's like a whole bunch of them like stuck together. Honestly, I don't remember. It was, it's not a very memorable movie. But yeah, I didn't think the sequel was very good. So just pretend that doesn't exist. Watch the sort of like the new Joker movie, right? And
right.
Just watch
That's coming on digital here shortly.
Very soon, yeah. I may
3 weeks after it released.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Curiosity has me kind of piqued. Like I kind of just, it's one of those things. I wasn't gonna go see it in theaters, but I kind of need to see it for myself.
Once you found out about the ending.
Oh yeah. I was like, I'm on board.
You're like, finally.
I know, right?
What I've been waiting to see.
So, yeah. So, like I said, Penguin.
I can't believe they put that in the freaking movie, dude.
Dude,
so
yeah,
disgusting.
and it seems to be completely true, and I'll report back when I finally see it. But I trust everybody at this point. It seems to be true, that the intent behind the movie was to basically tell everyone who found some interesting like meaning in the first one that they were just like wrong, and so they completely changed like a bunch of stuff. From what I've heard, I've listened to EFAP talk about it a little bit, and from what I've heard, like they rewrite a lot of character traits, and like Arthur gets completely reset in this one from where he was in the first one, because it's like 2 years later or whatever. So, and apparently it's just got a lot of problems, and everybody was like, it's not worth watching. So I was like, okay, well, it's like, yeah, and I'll put it on whenever it comes out or whatever. But
see, yeah, and I just don't want the first movie ruined for me, because I feel that it was really good.
I have gotten to the point where, like, especially when it's so bad it's not worth even recognizing that there's a sequel,
Mm-hmm.
Like I was, I haven't watched the Hangover movies in a long time. Funny enough, it's the same director. That was
pretty funny.
That's kind of how I was with that too. Like I've seen both the sequels to that, but I'm like, yeah, I have no interest. Like if you're gonna watch that, just watch the first one,
Yeah.
The difference with that and the difference with a lot of movies where they get sequels and they're just terrible is that Joker and the next one, it's like in what they were doing was extra intentional against the people who liked the first one.
Yeah.
You know,
I get what you're saying.
I think, you know.
Well, and maybe Top Phillips just needs to stick to doing single movies.
Maybe so. I mean, like, he's a competent director. I just don't understand because he seems to be directly involved with, there's sometimes like directors come out and they're like, nah, it was a studio thing. Nah, it was this, it was that. He's like, nah, it was me. And you're like, what? You hated it that much? It's just,
if he did it on purpose. Like, I know he.
No, that's what I'm saying. Really, I think he did.
Yeah. I wonder if he was just upset with Warner Brothers or what, because it was like, to do that is just crazy. It's kind of weird that you would do that to something you spent so much time on in the first movie. You think you still want to make something that's lasting.
It was what?
For the right reasons?
Quadruple the budget.
Yeah.
Among other things.
Which is wild. That's always a good idea.
Yeah, just a very strange way of handling that. And it's pretty common now. I mean, well, they all kind of take different forms. Like they're not all alike, but the new Dragon Age came out. I don't know if I think I've sent you some of the drama surrounding that or whatever, and it's bad, dude. And then IGN gave it a 9.
That's not surprising.
Oh, you know what? We were going to talk about that thing about IGN.
And I totally didn't even.
I forgot to send that to you. It's okay. We'll save that. Let's see. We have one more week till Arcane season 2. I was wrong. So it's not this weekend. It's the 9th. I looked it up again today, and I was like, why did I think it was the 2nd? Which is fine.
I don't know. But it screwed me up because I told my wife, I'm like, no, let's watch it.
Yeah, let's watch the entire thing.
David told me it comes out on the 2nd.
It'll give you.
I'm like, oh, David's a liar.
I know. Well, at least you got it. At least you got it done.
Well, dude, once you start, you can't stop.
Oh, I know. You just want to keep watching episodes.
Yeah.
So, what were we talking about? I don't even remember now. The IGN thing. So I won't go into like the whole thing. Like
you gotta weave it, David. You gotta weave that.
So the short version of it is that there is a woman who used to work there named Alana Pierce. She's got a YouTube channel now. She does some sort of work at Santa Monica Studios, which is one of Sony's big. I don't know how like up that ladder she is, but she does work there. And she had some sort of, she did some sort of work on God of War Ragnarok. But to be honest, like it's a weird thing because she's like, oh yeah, I did some like writing or whatever, and I was like, but the writing's pretty good in that. Though there's some, I hate this. There's like alternative history about like the writing in that, and they're like, oh, there's a few. I don't know if you remember the whole thing that with like Synthetic Man. This is like year or so ago or whatever. Yeah. But literally anytime it's like a meme now. But anytime he sees like a woman in a game or whatever, he's like, oh, it's Snoy, like it's a soy game or whatever. And he was like saying that about that, and it's like, dude, the central premise of those two games is still about a father and his son.
Yep.
Like, yes, I've got some criticism.
But is it a manly father, Dave?
I think Kratos is pretty dang manly. You know what it is? And I can't remember if we had talked about this when it came out. So have you played any of the original God of War games? The ones that
yes.
Yeah. So like, and you're going through Greece and you're ripping people apart and like sleeping with women and doing all this stuff or whatever. It's very much like of its time. They're fun games.
Like in a bed?
Yeah. In the sky. Well, Olympus, yeah. So it's and it's very like it would be considered kind of like taboo by like modern games journalism and blah blah blah.
Yep.
But then they take that premise and they try to do something. And I've said this a lot more mature. And I don't mean it in a M-rated game. It's like a mature story, like something that requires a certain amount of maturity to appreciate, and people will probably take that the wrong way. But I kind of stand by that. Like, I think that there is something where you're watching a story about someone who has done awful things to people, who now regrets many of his choices, and is aware of that, and is in sort of he sort of isolated himself and was looking for atonement, right? And
Yep.
so at the beginning of God of War 2018, like that's what he's doing, and people see that as like non-masculine. And I mean that pretty generally. I don't have. It's not other than Synthetic Man. Maybe like there's not.
That's because people have a misconception on what being a man is.
Fair enough.
What is masculinity, right? So,
Yeah.
go ahead.
And so it's a really interesting story, and you know, Kratos is a much more like introspective character. Like, he's lost his wife, and like the first story is literally about this journey that he goes on with his son, to spread his wife's ashes at the top of the mountain where she in the part of that world that she was born in. Forgive me, it's been a little while. I don't remember all the names. Anyway, so it's really cool, and like there's problems along the way, and I think it's I don't know, because it's very much based on the individual. But his son goes through different things and becomes rebellious, and a lot of people there's like part of the first game where like people are upset that, or like it annoys people because they think the kid's like annoying, and it's like, well, he's kind of supposed to be,
Right.
I mean, he's like,
Yeah, he's a kid.
yeah, he's a kid, and he
I mean, that specific kid is. And plus, going back to the masculinity thing, what I mean by that is there's definitely some people who think that just because redemption can be something that's feminized, when it's like, no, redemption's just,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, it's like a guy can't say sorry or a guy can't do this. And I think probably there's a bit of political brain rot involved in that.
I'd almost call it social media brain rot.
Yeah,
More than
maybe
specifically
a bit of
political.
both.
Yeah, I mean, well, to dip into the politics realm for a minute, I mean, none of them ever say that they ever did anything wrong,
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, like it tries, and I think succeeds in a majority of areas in crafting a more mature plot for the video game. And I just, it's always interesting, like the interpretations, right? Like I'm always kind of open to people's interpretation of them, even though it goes to like some wild places sometimes. In that game, I think compared to a lot of the other stuff that we've seen come out recently, only got the sprinkle of the Sweet Baby Inc. stuff because they did race swap Agrabota. It's a little hard, like especially with all the stuff that's come out about that company, to really look at that and be like, eh. It's also one of the worst parts of that game. It's just boring. You like ride around on like a ox or something, and then like it just, a lot of that specific section of that game was not great. But overall, man, I still think they tell a very interesting story with that about families, and there's this whole thing about like Kratos, like is he gonna have to kind of return to his old ways in order to like save the people that he cares about, and like that journey that he goes on and what ultimately happens. And I think it's really good. But like many things, I worry that multiple sequels, because it becomes successful, we're gonna go further down the like awful hole. Though we've talked about it some, but it's somewhat seems like some of that is going, the way of the dinosaur. Like we might finally be digging our way out of some of that. I mean, man, I'm gonna be really curious to see what goes on with Dragon Age. With its sales and everything, because some of the clips and stuff that are coming out of that game, now that it's, I think it's out, or it's out tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure.
Well, it's kind of like with again, not trying to get political, but I'm wondering if Jeff Bezos did this because of the failure of Lord of the Rings, or
Wait,
if it's a bit of that,
oh,
plus with it looking likely that Trump's going to get in office, um, with him, saying that we need to hire more conservative opinions for the Washington Post. We're not going to endorse a presidential
I
candidate,
I
stuff like that.
guess
I'm curious.
you know, I if he owns the Washington Post and he wants to fill it with a bunch of people that think exactly like I just don't pay attention to the Washington Post. Like unless you're telling me that, like, it's kind of like IGN, unless IGN is directly affecting specific things and like you can show me that that's happening. It's just like, oh, it's the meme gaming website.
Yep.
Just the way that, like, at this point nobody takes well, I say nobody, but a large majority of people have stopped taking uh mainstream
Those
media news,
publications.
yeah, the
Yep.
corporate press. They've
The
stopped taking
corporate
them.
press.
Yeah, they've stopped taking them seriously. You see stuff and you go, yeah, why would I pay attention to what you say? You know,
Why
uh,
am I going to pay a subscription?
it's definitely being phased out, and you can see as time has gone on that they continue to get backed into a corner, and they lash out by putting out ridiculous articles about people that are clearly just lies. Like, there's not even like a hint of, oh, we're trying to be objective in this. It's like, nah, they just
Yep.
basically put out massive hit pieces, or attempt to. They put out
That's
these hit
it.
pieces about people and it doesn't work. Yeah, man. And
Bas-
dude, I had told you earlier, like, I'm about to just, at least on my phone, I'm about to get rid of social media. And even like IGN, dude, they're just like shilling for political parties now.
Yeah.
They
Well,
they
you know how it works, right, David? It's instead of getting like the credible place to report on it, you have this random, publication no one has ever heard of.
yeah.
And then it's like, this, left-wing media outlet reports that, you know, David likes to lick lint. And then CNN
You
reports
should pick something
so and so
untrue.
said that David likes to lick, you know what I mean? And then it just
Yeah.
devolves from there.
Should be more careful with those examples and pick something untrue. Anyway, yeah, and I mean, I guess as a segue, like, I don't see any, for the most part, a lot. I don't see anyone other than a few people, um, really talking about Penguin. I
Yeah,
saw
I
an
don't see anybody either.
I saw an article
Dude,
from IGN where they were they were praising like a specific part of it, but I'm like, y'all have put out, what game was it? Dude, they put out a bunch of articles about that game Concord that lost like $400 million
yeah,
before all that came out, over and over and over again. But then something legitimately good comes out. I don't know. It's the weird. I just don't. It doesn't really matter ultimately. Like, they're a meme website. They the thing that I was getting to with that too is that they Alana Pierce specifically stated that the way that their grading system works is based on the type of game that is being put out. And what I mean by that is, say you have like a AAA game, right? So let's take,
right.
what was the one that they were, Star Wars Outlaws. They came out recently, right? So Star Wars Outlaws, according to her, and the way that IGN does this, is at minimum, like, if the game is as like bad, right? Like, Outlaws is bad. It was super buggy. I think I haven't seen much about like the money that it's made, but I don't think it did very well. And they will not. There are rare cases that this isn't 100%, but based on what she said, because of the like manpower and time required to make something like that, it gets automatically pushed to a 7. So, like, at minimum, at the very like least, that game will get a 7 and not get anything lower than that. So
Dang, that's
their
wild, dude.
their scale for like AAA, and I would even say to some degree like AA games, that I think the scale widens, right? And so, like, as your game gets more into that indie territory, so stuff that they may not look into, or like it's a meme game where like everyone's talking about it and they just know it's going to be terrible, so they're like, oh, we can give it a 1 and get clicks on the website for this, because there's a few things that have come out like Lord of Ring Gollum. There was a King Kong game that came out recently, and then there was this like third person PC shooter game or whatever that was supposed to be open world, that had a ton of controversy around it, and I think they reviewed that when it came out and gave it like a really low score. So they'll do that, right? And so
Right.
everything that they do and the way that their reviews work is kind of clickbait. Like you could probably have figured that out, or it's probably already a little bit obvious, but it's really interesting to hear it from someone who worked there. That it's like, yeah, well, we like Star Wars Outlaws is never going to get anything below a 7, even though that game is, from what I've seen, like a 3.
Yeah.
And that's where, we talk about this a lot, right? And people, and it's an interesting thing because what it comes back to, Joseph, like we've talked about in the past and had arguments with people about, where they go, yeah, but a lot of people worked really hard on it. It's like, so what?
You can work really hard on something and still not do a good job.
It's dude, it's such an interesting thing because it's like, there have been things that I've worked really, really hard on that have like crashed and burned, or like it just didn't hit the way I like. You put all of your heart into certain things, and then it's just like, it just doesn't respond. And then something
Doesn't
that
work out.
yeah, and then sometimes something that you're like, this isn't something I nearly care as much about, but it clicks, and you're like, what? Like, why this thing? And so, like, listen, I get it. You have a lot of people who spend a lot of time working on that Star Wars Outlaws game. They probably should have worked a little bit harder. And oh man, some of the stuff that I've seen from that, it's like anti-video game. It's weird. Like this has been a year where there has been a handful of games that you could say are just like the antithesis of what you would ever want with a video game. And
Wild, isn't it?
yeah. Some of it's been memed, of course, but it's crazy, dude. I just don't get it. So
People
yeah,
just inserting their political ideology into something instead of just trying to make something entertaining and fun.
yeah, exactly. And
They gotta say a message rather than tell a story.
yeah, well, and that's the thing, man. Is like it's all about specific opinions, and that's why you've seen with our conversation around Rings of Power that we've had, and over many years at this point, and that when you look at things as simple as like having certain themes in your show, and then what that means for the characters for that theme, right? So let's say like a fatherhood theme, what does that look like for your characters, and how do they react to certain situations, and how do you take that theme and essentially turn it into something much bigger, right? Because it's not, and I think a lot of people have figured this out, though it still pops up every once in a while. There's people have figured out that you need more than just themes in your show to make it good. And you can see that. You can see that with Penguin. You can see that with Arcane. You can see it with Shogun, and House of the Dragon.
Yeah, it can't just be themes.
It has to.
There can't be one singular story element. They all have to have cohesion.
Sure, it has to go somewhere. Like if you're like, well, my story's about fatherhood, and then it's like there's a dad and his son in it, and they're just kind of there, and they're like, what do you? Okay, yeah, I mean they're there, but what do you mean? What are you trying to get across? Like, what is like a simple one, and one that's always that's stuck with me over the past few years is Marriage Story.
Yes.
And there are some themes in that. There are things that movie is trying to get across to people. It's a very simple movie, but it's really effective in what it's doing.
Very effective.
And so that's the difference, right? And then you look at something like Rings of Power or Glass Onion, and people will look at it and go, "Yeah, don't you get it?" Like one of the narratives or like one of the themes surrounding it is like, "Oh, it's just stupid. It's supposed to be that way," and it's like, but it's not done effectively. Like,
So terrible.
yeah, it's a very and so that's kind of what I'm getting at. But yeah, man, they pretty much, I guess it'll be interesting to kind of see some of this in the coming weeks and years with them. It's bonkers to me, dude, that they are still around. Um,
Yeah, eventually they'll have to close up shop because are that many people really paying for it?
oh, who? IGN?
IGN.
Well, I think it's ad based for the most part.
Uh,
I mean, they don't pay their people very well. That's been known. I mean, I think even the people who have worked there have been like, yeah, I mean, like you don't make much doing games journalism. That's why a lot of people jumped ship and moved over to like YouTube and Twitch and a lot of these other places, because just like value for value, you gain a lot from your smaller audience sometimes who's willing to support you rather than
yep.
worrying about being like the big name in blank, where you require ad revenue and then everything that you put out is sort of just like milquetoast,
Yep. Because you have to be safe for the brand.
Right. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and I'll we'll cover it at some point, maybe next week if I can actually remember.
Yeah, right.
I gotta start writing some stuff down.
You and me both.
It's just funny because like we talk during the week, but like it's not always about the specific stuff that we talked about during the podcast.
No,
it just
not.
it just kind of depends. But yeah, man, let's talk. How far are you through Penguin?
Dude,
let's talk about Penguin.
Up.
So you are caught up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I watched the
so
previous episode.
We're 6 episodes in, and it's 8. Is that right?
I think so.
Do we have 2 episodes left? Is it okay? So my first question is: this getting wrapped up in one season?
So I've heard that they're gonna have Sophia in the Batman 2, and I'm kind of like, why? You know what I mean? Because this is my thing though. The reason why I say that is because I'm assuming that the Penguin show is about his journey ascending to become the Penguin, the top in their world, based off of the Batman movie and this show so far, the top like crime boss and mob boss in Gotham, right? And so how does that happen if Sal and Sophia are still alive?
Well,
it would be a question I would need.
If Sophia is still alive, I don't. We'll see what happens to Sal. Yeah, I mean, I think
more so Sophia because she seems to more so have the pull and the power now.
I'm curious. I want to see the whole season play out. Like I'm on board with it. What
are your thoughts on it?
I'm enjoying it. There's like little things here and there that I'm like, it feels like a little bit of a stretch, but I don't. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, but I don't know if I'm like. It's one of those things where there's stuff I'm like maybe, and I'm like I don't know how much I would really argue.
Yeah,
those things.
Like it's little things, but not that big deal. I think probably the episode that was most problematic for me so far, but that I still like, was the last episode.
Okay, and you haven't explained to me why, and I'm curious.
I guess part of it it seemed that there's a few things. The opening, I get obviously there's a time jump, but we go from him just finding the tunnel to all of a sudden he's running an operation down there.
I agree,
and they explained it. I get it, but it would have been like, well, that may have been nice to see, like how he was able to do this so fast.
A little montage.
Yeah, like given the stakes that were previous of, Sophia and Sal, hey, we're going after him, we're teaming up, and then all of a sudden now he has this kind of like small crime syndicate in Crown Point, funneling drugs and everything.
Yeah.
Which I get. It's not, again, I understand it, right? It just would have been nice to see.
It's not just that they did it quickly, and like kind of jumped ahead, but there seems to be a little bit of a time disparity between him doing that and then like what was going on with other characters and their kind of plot points, because they're all moving at like one pace and then that operation is moving at a different pace. And I guess the argument, if you wanted to make one, is that everybody in Crown Point doesn't have anything to do.
Yeah.
So they're all just like, sure, like if you take care of us, like we'll just come down here and work for you. Because, man, I mean, there are times.
I think the point would probably be that Sal and Sophia are so wrapped up in finding the penguin, right?
Yeah.
That that's why. But go ahead.
It just seems something about it seems a little odd. I'm not like really annoyed by it, but I remember being like, huh. I was like, all right, like I was trying to think like, so they're doing this right now, and like he's already gotten this far. Like, how long has it been? But it's minor as far as I'm concerned. Like I kind of like, all right, like
nothing that ruins it.
Yeah, it's not, and I don't know, man. It's probably bad to say this, but like compared to some of the other like completely unearned garbage that we've been through this year.
Oh yeah,
a tiny disparity in like the time between the character plot points. I'm like, man, we've had way worse. We've had way worse. This is like just a slight
stuff.
Yeah, just tiny compared. But what else was there? Was there some other stuff from?
I think the only thing that kind of it seemed that with Sophia in the episode, things were happening a bit too easy for her. They weren't that challenging.
Yeah.
And it's like more so kind of handing things for her character on a silver platter without her really having to earn it. Like I understand how everything went down.
Right.
I can kind of get, okay, she spared that lady's life at the end that was that had been with Penguin.
Yeah, no, I actually really liked. I liked that part. I think that shows that specifically. I kind of she's very much changed, but then there's that little piece of her still, and it shows that Penguin's, like, you could call her Penguin's love interest or whatever. I can't remember what her name is. How she like basically wasn't going to give anything up because she pretty much thought she was dead, right?
Right.
And then, sorry, spoilers for Penguin, by the way. Go watch it. It's pretty good. It's definitely a recommend. It's one of the most surprising things for me this year in entertainment. Never thought. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really expect it to be like, wow, this is kind of a serious crime drama. Like, what are we doing?
Either,
but yeah, I liked their interaction because it gives quite a bit of character to both of them.
I guess that just go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, she's trying to do things differently, right? Sophia is, and the expectation is like, oh, she's gonna try to get what she wants out of this lady and kill her regardless. And then when she doesn't, and then the exchange is basically like, because I think that lady's kind of shocked that she doesn't kill her, and then she's like, here's a little bit of information to get you where you're going,
Right.
And you can kind of dig into that a little bit, like, why did she do that? What? Because she's clearly not.
Yeah. To that is that why would she just trust Sophia's telling her the truth about Oz?
Well, she doesn't. Cobb. Yeah, you're right. She just doesn't have anything else to go on, and sometimes like honey's better than, it's the best way to. Yeah. And so when you like, she spared her life. That's what I'm saying is like there's definitely something to it that it's like, it's not your simple exchange of like, well, now I'm going to torture you or now I'm going to do this, because she's done that. We've seen her do it, and then she kind of understands like this is a dead end. She kind of gives her a palm leaf of like, hey, like I'm the reason you found me. Like I'm here. Like what do you want? Like let me see what's going on. And then I think she thought like, man, she's gonna kill me. But she kind of wanted, she also says she wanted to confront her over the deaths of all of those women that she was friends with. And then she got the opportunity to do that and realized this lady's probably not who I thought she was. And then when she spares her life, it's like, oh, okay. And then like it's like, all right, well here's this information, right? Because like, yeah, and you got to think about it too. Is like, okay, she spares her life, and she's not just doing that. Like, she's not just doing that. And this is me reading into it a little bit, but I think this is what's going on. The idea would be is that she's not just doing that because she's like, oh man, like thanks a lot or whatever. Like she ultimately there's probably something she wants in return. You know, whether that's just being in good favor, if Sophia's the one that like survives all of this, or you know what I mean. Because she's gained, you know, whether it's like earned or not. Like, yeah, I may have to go back. I want to watch the series again once it's all over to, you know, see if I was missing things or if there's things I'm like, ugh, you know, not as keen on. Yeah. But yeah, she's. I liked that. I thought there was quite a bit of good dynamic between the two of them. And yeah, they're kind of. This has kind of been a problem with some of these shorter, like limited series. Is like sometimes I do wish that they were taking their time a little bit more with things. Like I think that's a completely valid criticism of the show that, and this is something we've talked about with like Game of Thrones. Not so much Arcane. I would probably argue that Arcane uses every minute of its time very, very well.
Arcane doesn't waste your time.
No,
even when they have Imagine Dragons in the show.
Yeah, that
was like the only thing I saw.
So you know why they're there is because they're friends with Riot Studios.
Yeah.
So they've got like a history together. I kind of hope they don't do the same theme again this season. You know, it's just kind of a thing for them, and it still doesn't bother me because like it's in world, and I'm like, okay, like you could imagine that there's this band down here and they're listening to it. It's just, it definitely is one of those little things that takes you out of it. But yeah, it's
outside of that though.
It's minor.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
And even then, it's still not like a waste of your time or something like that.
Yeah,
know?
it's what, like 25 seconds of the show. But yeah, I mean, like as far as their characters are concerned, like the only, you know, it's not even like a criticism of Arcane. It's more of a like, man, I just want more of this, and I want more of these characters. Like it's not as if the story goes, man, it would have been really nice if like they spent more time with this. It's like, no, I think we get adequate time with everyone and they develop everyone really, really well. Especially for like 9 episodes,
yes,
not even quite 40-minute episodes. It's incredible how well that show uses its time. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I was going to say, here's the thing, too, about the Penguin that they have to answer is where the heck is Batman? Why isn't he involved?
Yeah. So there's been, allegedly, what it is that he, what was it that I had heard about this? That they haven't seen him since the events of the movie because he's basically gone back to the drawing board. Like he hasn't become fully this like creature of the night. You know how like he came out in the daytime a bunch?
Oh yeah.
And so I guess what they're getting at, and you know, a lot of people are like, man, they really, I've you know, I think Gary's even said it. He's like, man, they really need to like talk about him in the show or whatever. I'm more neutral on it. I guess it would be cool, but like I don't know if I care that much. And there's not I don't know if there's a natural way considering the characters that we're dealing with, unless someone at some point just says like, man, what happened to that guy? You know?
I think it would be smart to have him in the show at some point, like just make an appearance.
Maybe. I mean, maybe Bruce Wayne does, you know?
Something.
It's
getting
just
Robert Pattinson in there, I think would be smart somehow.
It's just so specifically focused on this thing.
Yep.
I'm still just pretty neutral about it. Like, I don't think it would take away from it. It would just depend on how like I would have to see it happen, and then I'd be like, okay, that's fine. You know, because they do it in the Joker. I think when the first time I saw that, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But on reflection, it's kind of fine, you know. because it's not very long, like the way that they deal with it, and they, it's like, yeah, he's in this universe, but man. Anyway, it's crazy how different, or how like I'm still sort of stunned about those two Joker movies and just how like the direction that they went with that.
Crazy.
But yeah, like overall, I'm still happy with it. I want to see, like I said, I think it's 8 episodes, so I'm want to see the last 2, be able to judge it as like a full season. I really like Vic. He's a really good character. I love that they gave a little bit of his backstory at the beginning of that one episode about what happens to his family. Mm-hmm. Dude, and to be fair, I think it's kind of crazy, but it's like after all the stuff that's like happened up here because of the hurricane, and then watching that, I was like, dang, that hits a little harder than usual, I think. And then, but yeah, it's really, really good. And then like, he was dealing with sort of the like, is this the life that I want? And then like ultimately, he's just tired of kind of being poor, and he thinks he's found a way out. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. And if he doesn't make it out of this season, I hope they just like wrap that up well.
I agree. I think Sophia, obviously with how the last episode ends, that's probably not going to end well for him and Penguin's mom.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which is a great dynamic for his character.
What's his Oswald's mom is one of my favorite characters, I think. That actress is fantastic.
Oh, phenomenal.
The way that she switches between the personality,
Go ahead.
That's it. It's really strong, like really powerful, the way that she portrays the character.
Just everything.
Yeah.
I mean, just a superb like masterclass.
Mm-hmm. And like how she's like really and now I mean, if again, spoilers, I think that more than likely Oz's mom will get killed. Yeah. And I think Vic will probably be all right.
You think so?
Yeah, and because she wants to send a message, because they constantly talk about how like that whole episode, they're like, oh, he doesn't care about anything, he doesn't have anything left, you can't get to him, whatever. And so like I think she will probably die. I could be wrong, dude, but yeah, I think she might end up dead, and then either Vic will be like, they'll do. We'll see, right? But the thought in my head is that he'll get away in some way, and then like that's motivation now for him because he built that relationship with her too. Mm-hmm. For him to be like fully on board with basically what is now like, because they're basically becoming the two new.
Got his. Go ahead.
I'll say like, they're basically the two new families, right? So it's like her family, she's combining with what's left of Salvatore's family, and then Penguin, and the scene that I liked from that episode, has now taken kind of all of these like smaller criminal underlords, and they're all basically working together as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Trying to create that aspect with them.
Yeah, so that's clearly where the build-up is. So it's, and now Vic and his mom are caught in the crossfire of that, which I think is pretty good.
Actions, which I enjoy seeing.
Yeah. I mean, it's another great example of a show where it's like, this thing happens, so like therefore this does, but because of this, now this, so therefore this is what has to happen. It's like the show understands that, unlike some other stuff we've watched this year. I'll be curious to see where. So like, I guess where I'm okay. So Arcane's like the last question mark for me, and then like I guess this is a good segue unless there's some other stuff you want to talk about with Penguin.
No, I'm good.
So Arcane's the last question mark for me as far as television goes this year. Movies, this has been an okay year for movies. Most of the stuff that I think that'll end up on the top of my list is all like indie flicks. It's been sort of a, I don't want to call it a stale year, but I just haven't quite been blown away
by anything
from, like, dude, I'm excited because they're re-releasing Godzilla -1 in theaters again.
Yeah.
I bought the the like special edition of that. It's like 4 discs, and it's got like special features. It's got -1, it's got minus color, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're releasing it in theaters again." And I'm like, "I'm going again." And I know people who haven't seen it yet, and I'm gonna be like, "Come see this movie with me." You know what I mean? Like that, and everything else that's come out this year, it's kind of been like yeah, there's stuff I like, but it's when we talk about all this stuff at the end of the year, the television's going to be more predominant, and it's going to be a little bit more of like if you, for lack of a better way of putting it, like the AAA stuff, But Arcane is the one that is the question for me because, yeah, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I think minus Arcane right now, I think Shogun is at the top of my list.
Yep.
For television. I think it's
gotta be, right?
It's pretty
but
solidly
the Penguin's really good, but it's
I think
the Penguin's up there too.
I know, and the biggest one for me, which it'll be this is
the problem with Shogun for me is that last episode.
Yeah, but it's getting a season 2 now, so you might get your wish. And okay, and here's the question: is the ending of Shogun worse than the mistakes of season 2 of House of the Dragon?
Yep.
Are you really?
No, I was just saying yep, as far as that's a good question.
Okay. And then the other question for me, because like
Shogun's better than House of the Dragon season 2.
For me, if Shogun's at number 1, right? And then hypothetically Arcane season 2 comes out and it's just as good as the first season, maybe even minus Imagine Dragons, right? So Arcane ends up sitting solidly at number 1, which puts Shogun at number 2 for me. There's a bit of debate in my head. Now I need to see the end of Penguin, right? We still have 2 episodes left. There's a bit of debate in my head right now. I think House of the Dragon inches it out just a little bit, like edges it out just a little bit. But there's a decent amount of argument in my head about Penguin versus House of the Dragon season 2.
Ooh, do you think Penguin's better than season 2 so far? House of the Dragon season 2?
It's tough because I really like Matt Smith.
I do too.
So, and like,
I enjoy the characters better in season 2 of
House of the
Dragon than the Penguin characters.
That's fair.
But as far as like trying to be objective, as far as like technical, it seems that so far Penguin's better.
As far as I feel like Penguin hasn't tripped up as much.
Yeah. Outside of I think the time jump was probably I can't think of anything right now, but that's the most glaring thing to me.
Right. Whereas like,
so far.
I don't know, there's like some really, Rhaenys sort of gets redeemed a little bit this season, in season 2. But then the stuff going on with the White Worm, like all of that is a pretty big, deduction for season 2. Maybe I need to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I need to go back and watch season 2 again. Man, his character's just so good. But they just sideline his character too much.
Yeah. Oh, not to mention they cut 2 episodes. So we were supposed to get more. So the show ends in like not a great
like a
spot.
Cushion.
Yeah, it sort of just kind of fizzles a little bit. Like it doesn't feel it doesn't feel complete, which I think is I think a fair argument. I'll have to think about it. I also need to. Oh, you know what? There's one more show. There's one more show that could take 3rd place, and it's The Gentleman.
What's that?
It's The Gentleman.
The Gentleman?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched that.
It's so solid. Like it's what I think we may have talked about. I may have mentioned this back when I watched it earlier this year. But it's one of those shows that you look at it and you're like, man, more television just needs to be like this. Even it may not be number 1 this year. And, number 1 for me kind of comes down to personal preference about like types of shows, like genre and things like that. And gangster stuff I like, but it needs to do more like heavy lifting on like the acting and the story side than something like Arcane, where like I like it because the cool magic and the different types of characters, and they're not all human, and that stuff just naturally rises to the top for me already. Yeah. So it's really interesting, but man, Gentleman is good. I guess. Well, Penguin's almost over. I don't really have, other than Arcane coming out, like I've got a little bit of time, and Arcane's coming out in 3 parts, so we're getting 3 episodes over the course of 3 episodes a week for 3 weeks.
I think that's smarter than to do.
Yeah, I agree. So I've got a lot of potential time to like sit down, go back through Shogun, Gentleman, and season 2 of House of the Dragon. So I might do that.
Dude, I'm stoked for Arcane season 2. I hope it sticks to landing. Now, let me ask you this again. I know
for sure.
The third time I've asked you. But with Arcane, they're just finishing Vi and Jinx's storyline. Or Powder, depending on who you ask.
Yeah. As far as I am aware right now, this is the end of their story specifically.
But not the show.
I don't know, because they're calling it like Arcane the final season, so I don't know if Arcane as like a title for the show, and they're gonna pick a different title when they move on to other characters. Because like I think we talked about this last week, but like, League of Legends has an insane amount of characters in it. Like the League of Legends already has a lot of built-in lore, and so what Riot ultimately wanted to do was take a show to expand that and be like, this is our actual, like, this is definitively the lore for these characters, which I like. I think that's really, really cool. And like I said, I just wish that more people cared that deeply about the thing that they were doing. It's an obsessive thing. You look at like Tolkien, it's a great example of this. And it's kind of a meme, right, where they're like, he created his own language and then he wrote a story about it. Yeah. And so like, and then you if you read, I have a set of quote unquote the trilogy. I know it's like one story, but like the books. And there's a thing at the beginning of the first book where they kind of talk about the changes that he made over time. He was obsessed with his writing. Lord of the Rings was a thing that he cared about. Like, it was his creation. It was his like life's work in a way, right? Like, it's the thing that he is known for. And you read into like what he did and changing certain things, and like they spelled dwarves wrong in the original print. And so like there's all these little details of that, right? And I told you this last week, but that's there, at least from what I've seen of season 1, and if you watch like the special features for it, that is the vibe that I get from the people creating Arcane, is that they are obsessed with it. Like they want every detail. Like they're talking about like the paintings behind Mel and like what that means, and how they decided on like hair designs for people, and like all of this and I haven't finished all the special features. It's like 2 or 3 hours worth. I need to try to do that before season 1 or before season 2 starts. But yeah, like they really, really care. And I don't know anything. I haven't looked at any of the spoilers. There are speculations from people about season 2 and what's going to happen. But before we get into that, because I think we might get into a little bit of it, I found our original review for season 1.
Oh.
It's about 35, 40 minutes or so, and it's episode 65. So we've done roughly 115 episodes since then.
Jeez.
So I will see about... I have a plan, and I need to check to see how far I got through the original edit I'm thinking it's not very far. But I think I might finally release that.
Uh-oh.
But what I would potentially like to do, this might be a bit more of a project than we'll see. I'm not going to make any promises. But you have now watched it, and in fact, you have the freshest eyes on season 1. It's probably been about 2 weeks since I finished it again. And I will be watching it again, but this week I ended up catching up on a bunch of other stuff, so I have not done another watch. Forgive me. I've done my 11th viewing of season 1 of Arcane. Where are you sitting now? Like I want like obviously general, but like where are you at with it? Like what are you feeling about the next season? About like where you think things are gonna go? That whole deal.
One of my favorite shows I've watched. I mean, as we mentioned with Penguin and the writing, instead of and then this happened and then this happened and then this happened, it's and therefore this happened. This character made this decision. It set off these consequences. And not only that, but I enjoyed I can't remember if I said this or if we talked about this in our season 1 review, but the ending of Jinx shooting the rocket off to the Piltover council members.
Yeah.
And how they all were voting for peace and everything. And the callback to her letting off the bomb, with Vander and Clagor and Milo and Vi in the building. I just, in an inopportune time. I mean, just the maturity and the wisdom within the writing in the show.
Yeah.
And just, I can't say it enough, consequences. That's something that's going from watching The Rings of Power and going to the Penguin and then Arcane and seeing, actions having consequences in a very articulate, meaningful, emotional, and impactful way is just refreshing. It's not like, oh, this would be a cool scene, so let's try and get our characters to this spot, and then this would also be a cool scene, so let's try and figure out how we can get them there.
Yeah.
It's no, the story is leading the pace, and then off of the main branch of the narrative of the story, you have these off of the main route of the story, you have these branches that then form, and do just everything about it. Just even as Silco grows on you throughout the show, like you really dislike him at first, and you still dislike him by the end of it, but just that fatherly connection he has with Jinx, even though he's warped and hardened, and Jinx has become hardened and more warped, there's still that's still an endearing aspect to him, how he wasn't going to hand her over.
Yeah. He definitely. Yeah, it's kind of funny because like when I watched it again, Silco was a character that I was like, okay, I remember why I like him, but I'm watching it again and I'm going like, why do I like this guy? And like by the time season 1 ends, you're like, dang, he's so good.
Yes.
Like what a great villain. And I don't think he'll be in season 2. I think his story's over.
He got killed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like even with that, with him being the villain and Jinx as well, I like how they don't make excuses for their bad actions. Like you understand what led them there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't excuse the evil they've done.
Exactly. They're not trying to so far, right? We need season 2 to really like land the plane. She completely, but I guess this is spoilers for a show that came out like 3 years ago. She completely embraces becoming Jinx by the end of the season, and kind of like you said, like that callback, like she is a Jinx because she gets all of those people killed trying to do the right thing, and then she decides to do the wrong thing. And is probably gonna, when everyone's trying to do the right thing,
Yep.
it unfortunately, it's so, and there's layers to it, I think, because you could, I think, pretty easily argue that unfortunately Piltover took too long to get to that decision. And
Yeah.
if they had been a little wiser, and there's a lot of things you can argue about it, because like Heimerdinger potentially getting, like Jace's ambition and getting rid of Heimerdinger potentially could have led down to that. Like I need to go back and look at it again, because there's all these different like angles, right? Like you watch it and you're like looking for the angles, and there's stuff that sticks out a lot, and then you're like, like, were they going for something there? Was like, are we gonna see something where it's like, dang, like, had they done this, or had they actually listened to Vi early on, maybe things would have been different. But like their pride and like Piltover's pride ultimately, especially for the people in that council room, like a lot of them, that could be the end of a lot of them. Yeah. Curious about Mel. I think Mel's probably okay. There's you might have noticed it, and I feel like it was just very distinct on the creator's part. And we may have talked about this too, because I remember us spending quite a bit of time discussing that final scene. I am really curious about her, but there's a shimmer. So like, the gold on her, like it's all tattoos.
Yes. Oh, it is.
Yeah. I didn't really know that, but they confirmed that in the behind the scenes stuff for her. They have like a thing about how they created her character, because she was specifically created for Arcane. She's not a League of Legends character. Sorry.
Oh, interesting.
But they hint at her maybe having some sort of ability, something going on with her, because and it might be that, it might not be. But when the rocket hits the window, she's like one of the last things that's like completely visible before they cut to black.
Yes, and she turns her head.
She turns her head, and her tattoo like shimmers. So that could just be like the explosion, right? And I could see them like, it would be, man. I'm curious what they're gonna do and where season 2 is gonna open up. She's the biggest question mark for me. Because I would need to know, like, I need to go back and watch it from the perspective of, like, if they kill her, like, if she's dead at the beginning of season 2, is her arc, like, done? You know what I mean? Like, is it satisfying, right? I'd probably say yes, because I kind of like that. Like, so Joss Whedon was known for this. Something you don't see very often anymore. Like, Marvel is stupendously bad at this, but Joss Whedon would like just kill favorite characters off. Like he wasn't afraid to be like, no, this is the impact that we want. Like this is where we want that emotional beat to be.
Right.
And he was great at it. And there's too many too many people out there that are just kind of like afraid to take out certain characters, even if they're popular, Yep. Arya in Game of Thrones is an example of someone. She has insane plot armor in Game of Thrones. It's stupid.
It's good to kill your characters.
It can be, for sure.
It's obviously done the right way.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to earn it. In the same way, like characters who go through full arcs, regardless of what it is, like it does need to be earned. So I would say yes. Like ultimately, I think like. So Jace is in that room. Jace isn't going to die. They're not going to kill him off. Her name's slipping my mind. Her mother's on the council.
Caitlyn.
Caitlyn, thank you. Her mom's dead. Like if we were taking like bets on it, 100% her mom's dead, because it makes Vi and Caitlyn are going to be at odds this season. It's going to be one of the big, because they grew so close.
Yep.
It makes sense that Vi is still going to be trying to redeem Jinx, and Caitlyn is going to be completely against that because her mother was killed.
Yep.
She has a lot of
100%.
like it's just the final nail in the coffin to put Caitlyn very much on the anti-Jinx side. So I'm so excited. I love season 1. Rewatching it again, it just I need them to land the plane on this one. Regardless of that, season 1 is just something very special.
Yeah.
Even if like they never were like season 2 just like never ended up happening, like they canceled it for whatever reason and they don't get a season 2. It is a very special piece of television. And I'm trying not to let the hype like get too high, but I'm pretty hyped about it. I'm pretty stoked for season 2.
It's okay to be excited about a show.
And seeing as long as like the creative team is like relatively still the same, and that like they know like, hey, we need to really like knock this out of the park. Oh man, it's been so hard not watching trailers and just like tearing into it a little bit to figure out what's going on. I just don't want to know. I want to sit and I want to experience it the way that it should be experienced. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I'll dig into the trailer way too much if I watch it, and I'll be thinking about specific moments and be like, when's this happening? And then like I'll just know things that it happens over time. But yeah, like. So here's a question for you, because this was something I have convinced a few people who have never seen it to watch it. One of the guys that I worked with watched the entire thing in like a couple days. It's an easy watch. Like it doesn't take that much of your time up, which I think that's one of the things that it does really, really well. Is it like it's great, it uses its time well, and it doesn't waste your time. How would you describe, like, if for someone who's like, it's a hard jump for some people because it's animated. Mm-hmm. How would you, if someone's like, okay, what's it about? Because like that's a
good question.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hard. It's not like, okay, so The Gentleman, it's pretty easy. It's like it's about a guy who inherits a weed empire, essentially, or he inherits like a piece of it, and then all of the troubles that like he goes through along the way. Like that's a real simple like kind of hook, I guess, like a good like explanation of it. Arcane for me is a little bit difficult, because what people do, and this is the problem, what people do is like, oh, it's based on League of Legends, and then people go, oh.
No, I would say it's based off of oh man,
it's tough, right?
It is, because you could talk about the class warfare aspect of it, but it's really more like about family dynamics, and the turmoil that happens between two sisters when an event leads them on into separate lifestyles.
Yeah, like family and the importance of it, and what happens when that gets torn apart, and then it's also a story, and this is like directly from the creators about like how is it possible to redeem a monster, which is going to carry over into season 2. And I don't really want to give it like the Game of Thrones comparison, because it's like whatever. But there is some political intrigue in it, and there are games being played, and it's very character driven. It's hard because it's not just like a simple through line. It's like you have a handful of characters, and they all have sort of their different specific plot things going on, and it all melds together by the end of the season, pretty much. Those connecting paths, and the way, and it's a story about the haves and the have-nots.
Yep.
And the way that affects people based on where they grew up. So it's a tough, for me, it's not easy to be like, it's this, it's like, oh, well, it's this, but then it's also this, and it's also this. Yeah. And so what I tell people most of the time is I go, okay, so it's like it just because a lot of people are just kind of like willing to watch stuff these days, you know. I don't know, and the easiest thing for me to tell people is I go, okay, just watch the first 3 episodes. Like, if you hate it or if it just doesn't click with you, don't worry about it. But I tend to think that people will watch it. They're paying attention for the most part. And then by the time you get to that last episode and the end of that last episode, they're I got to see more. I got to know. Yeah. And then you're hooked at that point because once you have the answers from episode 4, it just continues to snowball until the end of the season. And so for me, that's usually just what I tell people because I'm like, listen, I know it's animated. I know it's based off League of Legends. I know for a lot of people, those are 2 things that like you immediately are like, no, immediately no. But I'm just like, watch the first 3 episodes. I'm just like, it's not that much of an investment. It's an hour and a half movie, roughly. You know what I mean? Like it's not, especially for a lot of people who like binge crazy stuff. You know, like people who are watching 24 seasons of Grey's Anatomy. I'm just like, just watch this. I was like, it's. And I try to explain to him.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. It's insane. Someone mentioned that to me recently. Oh, somebody I work with was like, "Oh, what about Grey's Anatomy?" I'm like, there ain't no way. I'm never not going to do it. It's already not
it's
something.
Like when someone mentioned to One Piece to me, the animated, I'm like, yeah,
dude.
No, that shit has sold for me.
Ha 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 ha. That's a good one. Also,
I'm here all night, people. Not really.
I'm
here until a couple minutes from now.
Yeah, One Piece fans can at me, but that show starts off real slow. Like it's a little bit of a rough start to get into. But yeah, I that's generally the thing that I do because like I'm like I don't think you understand. Like I can't explain certain things to you, like because the some of the best moments in it, they're just like massive spoilers.
Right.
You know, like the outcomes for certain people, because like you watch this show at the beginning and you're like, Vander's a main character. You know? I was like, well,
yeah.
there's characters that you're introduced to that like they're only in a few episodes. Like characters that you think are going to be around. Now, I still think, like I was telling you last week, that there's room for prequel stuff for certain characters. I would love them to do little movies, releasing something about like the founding of Piltover. Maybe you do something with Vander, like early life stuff. There's definitely room for them to do stuff like post Arcane as well. It'd be great for them to be able to have little like interstitial things in between like their bigger seasons as well, just so like I'm not sitting around for 3 years waiting for this show to come out.
Waiting for the next one.
Because I get it, like take your time. I get it, but it would be great if there was a way for them to just do things here or there, so I get like a little taste every once in a while. Because it's just that good, man. Like I up to this point, I still trust them. So we'll see in 2 weeks once the first 3 episodes come out where I'm feeling with that, like where the gauge is. You too, man, because like I don't know. It's one of the things that I think definitively on like for us like stands high up as like, hey, this is something that people should like emulate. Not exactly. You got to take the right things away from it, but it's like if you're trying to do genre and like kind of on a what I would consider like an epic scale, this is how you do it, right?
Right.
You look at Tolkien and you take the right things away from Tolkien. There's stuff to learn from Game of Thrones. There's stuff to learn from this. There's stuff to learn from Shogun. There's plenty of examples. The problem is like we say a lot that people just learn the wrong lessons from these things.
They do.
It's like the Deadpool Wolverine stuff where it's like that is just going to continue to emulate like what they think is the most popular stuff, but like people just get worn after a while. It's like there's no story to this. Like, you can have your meta jokes, but how long do those jokes last before they're like, not funny anymore? Like you go back and watch something like Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder is still funny because it's not like meta. It's not really meta humor, right?
Right.
I'd have to go back. There might be a few things in there, but for the most part, like the humor in that is sort of like evergreen, especially the stuff with Robert Downey Jr. It's crazy. I saw that in theaters. It's crazy to think that movie is kind of like a classic at this point. Like
It really is a cult classic.
Yeah,
Dude.
it's in the category of Blazing Saddles, where you go, yeah, Blazing Saddles got Tropic Thunder. What else? It's great because it still hits certain chords like all the time, and it's insane that we lived at a time where Robert Downey Jr. was able to do that, and it's one of his best performances. Oh my goodness!
Funny, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to it. I think that season 2, I'm gonna be hopeful for once, and I really think it's gonna be good. It doesn't mean that I'm not gonna be objective. It's hard not to be at this point. Like certain things happen in stories, and I go, oh, and you kind of go, okay, well, let's see where they're going with that, and then like sometimes after a while, you're like, uh-oh. Like, what? Like, what are we doing here? And I think some of it's just conditioning from having watched, like, Wheel of Time and Rings of Power and what else? I mean, there's all the Marvel stuff, all the Star Wars stuff. And then, like, you get into something, even like Penguin, and you go, oh. Like, they're doing something here.
Yeah.
And so I think it's going to be the same, and I'm really, really excited. I hate that it's still like 2 weeks away.
I know, dude. Same.
And just waiting around, man.
For real.
Yeah, I don't know. Was there anything else you wanted to mention about it?
Nah, man, that's it for me.
I could sit and just maybe one of these days I'll do that. Just do like really, 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 really detailed stuff about it, because I think it's great, man. I think that they, I'm not looking forward to the Jinx is Joker comparisons.
Oh yeah,
it's like, yeah, it's not really. It's not exactly what they're going for, especially because like there's like I don't know if they've never done anything where they've like tried to redeem Joker, right?
I can't remember.
Like he doesn't have someone. Like his whole thing is that he's just like the rabid dog. Like he doesn't. He's chaos essentially.
Yeah.
Like it's just like a pure form of chaos. And that's she is that, but like there's more. I mean, there's a reason that her name is Jinx, and like why they call her that. Because it goes quite a bit deeper than just like, oh, she's just trying to kill people and cause chaos. So, all right. Well, we'll stop it there. I guess we'll do the IGN stuff next week. Go into that video a little bit. We haven't done that in a while. That might be a good one to.
Would be pretty fun. Send it to me.
Yeah, I'll send you the video. I might spend a little time like cutting out like she wastes like a ton of time in that video, dude. I know, like, it's unfortunate the way that like YouTube works, where I've seen this more. I don't know if they're headed back towards long form content, or if it's just the stuff that gets recommended to me. But I've seen quite a bit more like long form video essay stuff on YouTube more recently, and
I have as well.
It seems like a lot of stuff is longer. The problem is that it's not always good because it is. In fact, I think it hurts. Like, again, it's the same way with, like, we talk about regular television shows. Like, when you're like, kind of wasting time on certain things and you start to meander in the middle of your video, it's like, it doesn't really matter if it's long unless people just aren't paying that close attention to it, which, honestly, I think that's part of it. If you want, like, really engaging content, it can't really just be based on, like, the algorithm, It just sucks because, unfortunately, that's the way that, like, you get views sometimes. Like all of the like weird details and there's nothing like organic about viewership for the most part anymore. It's completely kind of up to like where the algorithm like throws you for the week. Like our stuff's been all over the place lately. It's like some weeks is really strong, and then other weeks it's like, hello. But here we are. We're still doing it. I got to get caught up on getting the podcast stuff back out. I'm still a little behind on that. So that is on the docket for this week. So apologies to anyone who that's their main form of like listening to us. I will be getting back into that this week and trying to get back on like a more regular schedule because things are starting to calm down a little bit and become a little more normalized. And I'm itching to get back into doing some more video editing. So we'll see what that leads to in the coming weeks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and like I've been thinking about it. I do want to do some game streams. I might do something on Halloween. Maybe play Resident Evil or something like that. Because I've got Friday off. Halloween's on Thursday. So I gotta figure that out. Because I don't know if I really want to play anything new. I kind of want to play something that like I know pretty well. So it's not just like, it's like, I hate this. It's like Alan Wake. You know, I got into it, and it wasn't too long before I was like, oh, this sucks. And then Whoopa and Jake and a few other people were like, well, you got to finish it now. I was like, oh, okay. So we'll see. Anyway, Joseph, anything else before we close out the show?
No, that's it for me, man.
Sweet. Well, Joseph, I hope you have a good week. I hope everyone who catches this episode, whether you've been in the troll room or whether you, wherever you happen to watch this on whatever platform or podcast network or whatever the case may be, we will see you guys next week for another episode. And until then, y'all take it easy.
See ya.